Long before Alma Fenwick learned that mountains could keep secrets, she learned that houses could. The Fenwick home on Commonwealth Avenue in Boston was a narrow brownstone with polished brass, dark carpets, and windows that admitted light without ever seeming to welcome it. Every room carried the faint scent of beeswax, coal smoke, and Dorothea Fenwick's lavender water. Nothing was allowed to remain where it had been casually placed. Nothing was served without the proper spoon. Nothing was said at the table that might disturb the appearance of peace. Alma was the only thing in the house that could not be arranged into delicacy. By the age of 16, she stood taller than most women and broader than many men. She had thick arms, strong wrists, dark hair that refused to hold a fashionable curl, and dark eyes that seemed almost black when she was thinking. Her body was large and heavy, built with a natural strength that showed itself even when she tried to hide it beneath loose sleeves and high collars. Dorothea treated that strength as if it were a family scandal. "Do not lift that," her mother would say when Alma reached for a coal bucket. "Let Thomas carry the trunk. Sit with your shoulders turned. Do not stride. Do not take up the entire doorway." The instructions were endless, and each one carried the same quiet message. The less of herself Alma revealed, the more acceptable she might become. Alma learned to fold her hands in her lap. She learned to speak softly. She learned to enter rooms sideways when people were already gathered. She learned that a woman could be made ashamed of nearly anything if the lesson began early enough. Her father did not defend her as often as he should have. Leonard Fenwick was a bookkeeper for a shipping concern near Long Wharf, a patient man who smelled of paper, wool, and cold harbor air. He disliked conflict with the helplessness of someone who had spent his life recording other men's fortunes while building very little of his own. Yet he loved Alma. Sometimes, late in the evening, when Dorothea had gone upstairs and the house was quiet, Leonard would bring account books home from the office and set them before his daughter. "Find the error," he would say. Alma always did. At first, the mistakes were simple. A payment entered twice, a column added incorrectly, a freight charge placed under the wrong vessel. As she grew older, he gave her more complicated problems: missing inventory, altered dates, numbers that appeared correct until compared with another ledger. She had a gift for it. Numbers did not care how wide her shoulders were. A false total did not whisper behind a fan. A ledger either balanced or it did not. "You see structure," Leonard once told her. "Most people see only a page." Alma remembered those words for the rest of her life. Her only close companion in childhood was her younger sister, Ruth. Ruth had been born small, pale, and often ill. Alma carried her upstairs when fever weakened her legs. She sat beside her through long nights, changing cloths, measuring medicine, and reading adventure stories in a low voice. Ruth never treated Alma's size as something unfortunate. To Ruth, Alma's arms were safe arms. Her broad body was warmth during winter coughing spells. Her steady presence was a kind of shelter. "You should have been a ship's captain," Ruth once whispered, as Alma helped her from bed. "Why?" "Because everyone would obey you. No one obeys me." "They would if you stopped asking permission." Alma smiled at the time, but the words remained with her. Ruth died at 17. Afterward, Dorothea removed the girl's embroidery from the parlor because grief, she said, should not become untidy. Leonard withdrew into longer workdays. Alma continued moving through the house, quieter than before, carrying the absence of her sister in the same hidden way she carried nearly everything else. Only her Aunt Miriam seemed to understand that silence did not mean emptiness. Miriam Fenwick was Leonard's older sister, a widow who had gone west in the 1870s after her husband's death. Family gossip claimed she owned a boarding house somewhere in Montana and had become eccentric from living among miners, trappers, and people who did not know which fork to use. She wrote letters to Alma. They arrived smelling faintly of wood smoke and pine resin. Miriam described elk crossing snowy valleys, summer storms rolling over mountain ridges, and wildflowers growing in places where no gardener had planted them. Once, when Alma was 24, and Dorothea had spent an entire evening criticizing the fit of her dress, a letter arrived containing a pressed blue flower and a single sentence. "There are places in this country where the land does not ask a woman to apologize for the amount of space she occupies." Alma kept that sentence hidden in her father's old atlas. Years passed. Suitors came rarely, and never returned after Dorothea's attempts to manage the conversation. Edwin Carow was the exception. Edwin was a junior banker from a respectable family, narrow-faced and careful with his cuffs. He did not insult Alma openly. He praised her calmness, her domestic skills, and her unusual reliability. He said he admired women who understood duty. He also suggested that a physician might prescribe a restricted diet before any engagement was announced. "It would not need to be severe," he said, "only enough to make public life easier." "For whom?" Alma asked. Edwin seemed surprised by the question. Dorothea later called Alma ungrateful. "He is willing to overlook a great deal." Alma looked at her mother across the breakfast table. "I would prefer a man who does not believe loving me requires overlooking me." Dorothea set down her cup. "Love is not the foundation of a sound marriage." "No," Alma said softly. "I have begun to suspect fear is." Her father heard about the exchange. That evening, he entered Alma's room and handed her a small iron key. It belonged to a locked drawer in his desk. "If anything happens to me," he said, "the papers inside are yours." "What papers?" "Records, letters, a few documents concerning Miriam's property." "Why would Aunt Miriam's property concern me?" Leonard hesitated. "She named you in her will." Alma stared at him. "Miriam has no children," he continued. "She said you were the only one in the family who ever read her letters without treating them as entertainment." Dorothea knew nothing of the arrangement. Leonard insisted that Alma keep it that way. "Your mother believes security comes from controlling what people know," he said. "Sometimes security comes from knowing what not to reveal." It was one of the few openly defiant things Alma ever heard him say. Leonard died the following winter after collapsing at his desk. He left behind modest savings, several unpaid medical bills, and the contents of the locked drawer. Among them were copies of Miriam's letters, a survey description of land in the Montana Territory, and correspondence from a property agent named Crispin Hobb. Miriam had died 6 months before Leonard, though the news had reached him only weeks before his own death. Hobb's letters described the estate as a profitable mountain boarding house with 20 acres of surrounding land, furniture included, suitable for immediate occupation. The property, he wrote, had been left jointly to Alma and another beneficiary whose ownership could be settled after her arrival. Dorothea read the letter only because she entered Alma's room without knocking and found it on the bed. For several moments, she said nothing. Then she laughed. It was not a joyful sound. "You cannot travel to Montana." "I can." "You have never traveled farther than New York." "Then I will travel farther than New York." "You do not understand what the West is." "Neither do you." Dorothea's face hardened. "You are grieving. You are confused. Edwin has renewed his interest, and his family is prepared to be generous. You have a place here, if you behave sensibly." Alma folded Hobb's letter. "My place here depends upon becoming less visible every year. Your place here depends upon accepting reality." Alma looked around the room in which she had spent most of her life. The bed was narrow. The wardrobe was filled with dresses chosen to disguise her shape. Ruth's last letter rested in a box under the floorboard. Leonard's atlas lay beside the window. Alma thought of Miriam's blue flower. "There may be more than one reality," she said. Dorothea called the journey foolish. Edwin called it dangerous. Several acquaintances called it brave, in tones that suggested they expected her to die. Alma sold 2 pieces of jewelry, packed her father's ledgers, her aunt's letters, several practical dresses, heavy boots, and Ruth's silver hairbrush. She left Boston on a wet April morning, without knowing whether she would ever return. The journey west lasted nearly 3 weeks. At first, Alma was exhausted by the constant attention. People noticed her when she boarded trains. Conductors hesitated before assigning her a berth. Children stared until their mothers pulled them away. Men sometimes offered help with her luggage, then appeared offended when she lifted it herself. Yet the farther west she traveled, the less carefully the world seemed arranged. Cities gave way to towns, towns to open country. The sky widened. The buildings grew rougher. People spoke more directly. In Chicago, a porter watched Alma lift a trunk that had required 2 men in Boston. "You sure you don't want a job with the railroad?" he asked. It was the first joke about her strength that did not feel cruel. She laughed. By the time she reached Helena, Montana, the air had changed. It was thinner, sharper, and scented with dust, horse sweat, and distant pine. Snow remained on the highest mountains, even though summer had begun in the valleys. Crispin Hobbs' office occupied a room above a harness shop. He was a narrow man with reddish sideburns and quick hands. His desk was crowded with documents tied in string, though none appeared to be filed in any useful order. "Miss Fenwick," he said, rising, a genuine pleasure. Alma did not care for the way he looked at her. His surprise lasted only a moment, but it was there. "You wrote that the property was a boarding house." "Yes, in the broad sense." "What broad sense?" "A residence capable of accommodating guests." "How many rooms?" Hobbs smiled. "Mountain properties are not measured by city expectations." Alma placed his letter on the desk. "You wrote that it was profitable. It has tremendous commercial potential. That is not the same thing." "No, but I think you will find the distinction less concerning once you see the valley." He began speaking rapidly about timber rights, mineral rumors, future roads, and the expected growth of nearby settlements. Alma listened without interrupting. Then she asked to see the deed. Hobb hesitated. Only slightly, but Alma noticed. He produced a copy showing that Miriam Fenwick had owned an undivided half-interest in a parcel known as Silver Basin. The remaining half belonged to a man named August Weller. "Why did you describe the other owner as another beneficiary?" "Because the legal arrangements are complicated." "Is Mr. Weller expecting me?" "I sent notice." "When?" "Some weeks ago." "Did he answer?" "Mountain mail is uncertain." Alma studied the document. The description matched her father's papers, but the deed contained a later notation concerning a purchase option. "What is this?" "A routine instrument allowing one party to acquire the other's interest." "Which party?" "That has not been determined." "Then why is it recorded?" Hobbs' smile tightened. "Miss Fenwick, property matters in the territories are sometimes handled with more practicality than ceremony. My father taught me that men who praise practicality are often asking someone else to ignore a missing document." For the first time, Hobbs stopped smiling. "You are welcome to remain in Helena while I clarify the record." "How long?" "A month, perhaps 2. I have already paid for transport to the valley." Hobbs spread his hands. "Then you should go and inspect your inheritance." He arranged passage with a supply wagon leaving the next morning. Before Alma departed, he gave her a packet of papers and urged her to sign an acknowledgement stating that he had fulfilled his obligations. She read every line. "I will sign after I see the property." Hobbs' eyes cooled. "Your aunt was more trusting." "My aunt is dead." The supply runner was Morris Bell, a weathered man with a grey beard, a bent hat, and the cheerful habit of speaking to his horses as though they were business partners. He drove a wide freight wagon loaded with flour, lamp oil, tools, mail, and sacks of feed. A small mule tied behind the wagon spent the first hour trying to bite the tailboard. "That's Button," Morris said. "He belongs to August Weller." "Does he always behave that way?" "No, sometimes he kicks." The road climbed steadily. They passed mining camps, ranches, and settlements that seemed to consist mainly of one store, 2 cabins, and several dogs. On the second day, The road narrowed into a mountain trail. Morris told Alma about Silver Basin. "It's not much of a town." Mr. Hobb described a boarding house. Morris coughed into his glove. There was one, in a manner of speaking. What manner? Miriam rented beds to travelers now and then, hunters, surveymen, timber crews. How many beds? 3, counting hers. Alma closed her eyes. Morris glanced at her. Hobb sell it to you as a hotel. He used the phrase, profitable mountain boarding house. Well, Miriam made a profit once when a railroad survey crew stayed 12 days, spent most of it replacing the stove afterward. Why? One of them tried drying blasting powder in the oven. Alma opened her eyes. Did it explode? Only a little. Morris waited. Then he laughed. To Alma's surprise, she did too. The valley appeared late on the 3rd afternoon. Silver Basin was not silver. It was green, blue, gray, and gold beneath the lowering autumn sun. Mountains rose on 3 sides, their slopes thick with pine. A river curved through the valley floor. Near the tree line stood a weathered cabin, a barn, a shed, and the remains of a second structure that had collapsed long ago. There was no town. There was no road beyond the cabin. There was, however, a man standing beside the barn with a rifle resting across his arms. August Weller was taller than Alma expected, though not by much. He wore a dark beard trimmed close to his jaw and a coat patched at one elbow. His brown hair was tied back at the neck. He had the sun-darkened face of someone who spent more time outdoors than in, and his expression suggested that surprise was an inconvenience he preferred to avoid. Morris stopped the wagon. "Brought your flour," he called. August looked at Alma. "What else did you bring?" "Half your land." August lowered the rifle. "No." Alma climbed down from the wagon. "Mr. August Weller?" "Yes." "My name is Alma Fenwick. Miriam Fenwick was my aunt. I know who she was. She left me her interest in this property." "No, she didn't." Alma removed the deed copy from her satchel. August did not take it. "I purchased Miriam's share in March," he said. "She died in February. We reached an agreement before her death. Do you have a recorded deed? I have a contract. May I see it?" His eyes narrowed. "May I see yours?" Alma held out the copy. August read it. His jaw tightened as he reached the notation concerning the purchase option. "Crispin Hobb gave you this?" "Yes." "That fox-faced thief." Morris began unloading flour. "I take it this was not the notice he promised to send," Alma said. "I received no notice. Mr. Hobb claimed the mountain mail was uncertain." "The mail is uncertain. Hobb is certain. He lies every time he moves his mouth." August went inside and returned with a tin document box. His contract stated that he had paid Hobb a deposit to purchase Miriam's share, with the remainder due once probate was completed. "How much?" Alma asked. $800. It was nearly everything she possessed. "Hobb told me I could buy your share," she said. "For how much?" $700. August looked toward the distant mountains, as though considering whether he could shoot a man from 40 miles away. Morris carried the last sack into the shed. "You two can sort out the law after winter," he said. "Storm season's coming early." "I will not be here for winter," Alma replied. Morris looked at the mountains. "You might want to tell them." August had one guest room. Alma entered it reluctantly and found a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small window overlooking the valley. The room was clean but cold. Miriam's belongings were gone except for a wooden trunk in the corner. Alma knelt beside it. Inside were blankets, 2 wool dresses, a bundle of letters, and a ledger. She opened the ledger and recognized her aunt's handwriting. The boarding house profits were, as Morris had suggested, limited. But Miriam had recorded every visitor, every payment, every repair, and every conversation concerning land offers. Several entries mentioned Crispin Hobb. One mentioned Ambrose Tilling, attorney for the Northern Crown Mining Company. Alma was still reading when August appeared at the door. "You can stay tonight," he said. "Tomorrow Morris can take you back." Morris has already left. He camps at the lower crossing. He said he would not return for 3 weeks. August swore under his breath. "I can walk to town," Alma said. No, it was not a request. The nearest settlement is 38 miles. The trail crosses 2 ridges. Snow is expected. "I have traveled farther than 38 miles. Not through those mountains." Alma rose. August looked at her, as though only then realizing how large she was at full height. His gaze moved briefly to her broad shoulders and strong hands. She waited for the familiar reaction. Instead, he said, "Those boots are wrong." Alma looked down. "They were recommended by a shopkeeper in Helena. That shopkeeper has never crossed wet granite. What is wrong with them? The soles are smooth. Can they be repaired?" "Yes." "Then repair them." His eyebrows lifted. "I beg your pardon? You say I cannot leave safely because my boots are wrong. You say the boots can be repaired. Repairing them would seem more useful than standing there explaining the problem." For 1 second, August looked offended. Then something changed in his face. It might have been amusement. "I charge for guide work," he said. "I charge for bookkeeping. I don't need a bookkeeper." "Your flour account is wrong." His amusement vanished. "What?" "I saw the invoice. Morris charged you for 2 extra sacks." "He would not. He made an addition error. The individual amounts are correct. The total is not." August stared at her. Alma held his gaze. Finally, he said, "Supper is at 7. The storm arrived before dawn. Snow fell in dense, wind-driven sheets. By noon, the trail had disappeared. By evening, the temperature dropped sharply enough to freeze the water bucket inside the shed. For 3 days, the cabin stood inside a white world. August spoke little. Alma spoke less. They divided the space with formal precision. She used the guest room. He slept in a smaller room near the kitchen. They ate at opposite ends of the table. On the 4th morning, the storm cleared. August saddled his horse and rode toward the lower trail. He returned after dark, his coat covered in ice. "There was a landslide," he said. "Half the ridge came down. The trail is blocked." "For how long?" "Until spring, unless a crew comes through." "Will one?" "Not this late." Alma absorbed the answer. "How much food do we have?" August frowned. "Enough." "For how many months?" 5 if rationed." "How many animals?" 2 horses, Button, 6 hens, and a milk cow." "How much feed?" "Enough." "That is not a number." His expression hardened. "I have wintered here before." "Alone?" "Yes." "Then your previous calculations were for 1 person." "I know that." "Do you?" The question struck harder than she intended. August turned away. Alma regretted the tone, but not the concern. The next morning, he placed every food record on the table. They counted flour, beans, oats, salt pork, dried apples, coffee, sugar, lamp oil, candles, hay, grain, and medicine. Alma calculated daily portions. August watched her work. "You do that quickly," he said. "My father kept shipping accounts." "And you helped him?" "For years." "Were you employed?" "No." "Why not?" Alma looked at him. "You have seen me." "Yes." "Then you know why." August's eyes moved over her again, but not with disgust. He seemed to consider the question genuinely. "Because you are a woman?" "That was one reason." He waited. She did not offer the others. Their first serious disagreement concerned firewood. August had stacked enough for an ordinary winter. The early storm and damaged trail changed the calculation. Alma showed him that they would run short by February if temperatures remained severe. "We can cut more," he said. "We? You are not going into the timber." "Why?" "It is dangerous." So is freezing. I can handle it. Not alone. I have handled it alone for 6 winters. And if you break your leg, I won't. That is not planning. That is vanity. His face went still. No one in Boston would have spoken to a man that way, least of all Alma. She felt a pulse of fear, but she did not retreat. August set down his cup. You think because you can add figures you understand mountains. No. I think because I can add figures, I understand when the woodpile is too small. They stared at each other. Then August stood, took 2 axes from the shed, and handed one to her. This is heavier than it looks. So am I. That startled a laugh out of him. It was brief and unwilling, but real. They cut wood for 6 hours. At first, August watched her too closely, waiting for weakness. Alma knew it and resented it. She swung carefully, learning the tool's rhythm. Her palms blistered, her shoulders burned. Yet she did not tire in the way he expected. Her body, so often treated as cumbersome, proved steady and powerful. She could drag branches he struggled to move alone. She braced logs with her weight while he cut them. When the sled stuck in deep snow, she leaned into the harness beside him and helped pull it free. By sunset, August was looking at her differently. Not romantically. Not yet. Respect came first. You have done farm work, he said. No. Then how are you still standing? I spent 7 years lifting my sister when she was too ill to walk. He stopped. I'm sorry. She has been gone 12 years. That does not answer whether you miss her. Alma looked toward the trees. No, she said, it does not. The weather worsened. Winter settled into Silver Basin with a severity that made time feel physical. Snow covered the lower windows. Ice formed along the inside roof beams. The sun sometimes vanished for days. August kept detailed notes on temperature, animal tracks, snowfall, and plant specimens. He had once taught school in Vermont, he explained, before traveling west with a surveying expedition. Why did you stop teaching? Alma asked. Parents? She glanced at him. That is a short answer. It is an accurate one. He had argued with a town board that wanted poor children removed from his classroom because their families could not pay fees on time. The board dismissed him. Afterward, he worked as a guide, mapmaker, and collector of botanical specimens. He sent dried plants and field notes to universities in the East, though the payments were irregular. You are a naturalist, Alma said. Not according to anyone with a university chair. Do your observations become less accurate because they refuse you a title? August looked at her. No. Then you are a naturalist. He considered that in silence. Alma began organizing his records. At first he objected. You moved my notebooks. I arranged them by year. They were arranged. They were in 3 barrels. I knew which barrel. You spent an hour looking for the 1887 rainfall notes. 40 minutes. You are correct. That is much better. He smiled then, openly. It changed his face. As the weeks passed, their guarded politeness softened. They shared work because survival required it, then conversation because silence no longer did. August taught Alma to read the weather in cloud movement and wind direction. He showed her how to distinguish wolf tracks from dog tracks, how to test river ice, and how to wrap her feet so cold would not collect around her toes. Alma taught him double-entry bookkeeping. She showed him that 2 buyers had underpaid for specimen shipments and that Hobb had taken unexplained commissions from 3 land-related transactions. Did you ever ask for receipts? She said. Hobb said the expenses were customary. Customary theft is still theft. August leaned over her shoulder, reading the figures. He was close enough that Alma felt the warmth of him. She became suddenly aware of her own body, not as a source of shame, but as a living thing occupying the same small space as his. She shifted away. August noticed, but said nothing. In December, Morris appeared on snowshoes. He brought mail, medicine, and news. The lower trail's buried, he said. Came over the eastern pass. Nearly lost Button's cousin in a drift. Button, hearing his name, kicked the stall door. Morris handed August a letter from Ambrose Tilling. Tilling offered to purchase the entire valley for the Northern Crown Mining Company. The amount was substantial, though far below what the land might be worth if mineral deposits were confirmed. The letter assumed August possessed full title. He knows I don't, August said. Maybe he thinks you can arrange it, Morris replied. Alma read the letter. A second document was enclosed. It was a quitclaim deed, supposedly signed by Miriam Fenwick, 6 days after her death. Alma's skin turned cold. This is forged. August took it. You are sure? I saw her death certificate in Boston. She died on February 9th. This is dated February 15th. Morris removed his hat. That's not subtle. Fraud often succeeds because people assume boldness is evidence of legitimacy, Alma said. The signature resembled Miriam's, but lacked the heavy downward stroke she used in the letter F. The witness was Crispin Hobb. The notary seal belonged to a county 200 miles away. August folded the document carefully. This means Hobb and Tilling are working together. Or Tilling accepted papers without asking questions, Alma said. You believe that? No. They needed evidence from the county recorder in Helena, but the Eastern Pass was dangerous and worsening by the day. Morris planned one final supply journey before deep winter closed every route. August decided to go with him. I can examine the record myself, he said. I should go, Alma replied. No. The forged signature is my aunt's. The pass is too difficult. For me. For anyone. But not for you. I know the route. So does Morris. August's jaw tightened. We are not debating this. Alma looked at him steadily. That sentence may have worked with school children. It rarely did. It will not work with me. They argued until Morris left the room. In the end, Alma remained at the cabin because someone needed to care for the animals, not because August ordered it. He departed with Morris before dawn. A storm came 2 days later. By the 4th day, they had not returned. Alma fed the animals, carried wood, and watched the eastern ridge disappear behind snow. She told herself that mountain travel was slow. She told herself August was capable. By the 5th day, she stopped sleeping. At noon, Button began braying toward the trail. Alma went outside. 2 figures emerged through the snow. Morris walked ahead, leading a horse. August sat in the saddle with cloth wrapped over his eyes. Alma ran to them. What happened? Snow blindness, Morris said. Lost his dark glasses crossing the upper bowl. August tried to dismount and nearly fell. Alma caught him. He was taller, but she held his full weight long enough for Morris to move beneath his other arm. I can walk, August said. No, Alma replied. You can obey. Even in pain, his mouth moved slightly. They got him inside. His eyes were swollen and fiercely sensitive to light. Alma darkened the room, applied cold cloths, and measured the laudanum Morris had brought. I need to return to the lower station, Morris said. There are 2 families waiting for medicine. You cannot travel in this storm. It'll worsen tomorrow. August turned his covered face toward him. Take the chestnut mare. Morris left before sunset. Alma remained with August. For 2 days, he could see nothing. The blindness frightened him more than he admitted. He reached for objects that were not where he expected them. He hated needing help to cross the room. Once, after knocking over a water cup, he struck the table with his fist. Alma cleaned the spill. Do not pity me, he said. I do not. You sound calm enough to be lying. I sound calm because your anger does not frighten me. He went still. Alma wrung out the cloth. My sister lost the use of her legs during her last year, she continued. She hated being carried. I am not your sister. No, she apologized every time she needed help. You issue commands. August laughed despite himself, then winced. I am sorry, he said. For what? For assuming you would be helpless here. Alma placed the cloth over his eyes. You were not entirely wrong. I was entirely wrong. I did not know how to split wood, read ice, harness a mule, or tell whether a storm would move north. You learned. Because you taught me. He was quiet. You saved my life, he said. Morris brought you home. I mean before that. The supplies, the wood, the accounts, all of it. Alma looked at his face beneath the cloth. No one survives alone, she said. His hand moved across the blanket until it found hers. He did not grip it. He only rested his fingers against her knuckles, asking without words whether he could remain there. Alma allowed it. On the third morning, August could see shapes. By the fifth, he could see her face. He sat near the darkened window while Alma replaced the bandage. You are staring, she said. I have spent 5 days seeing nothing. That does not explain why you are staring at me. It does to me. Alma's hands slowed. August looked directly at her, not quickly, not apologetically. What? She asked. I was remembering your voice. My voice? When I could not see, I knew where I was because I could hear you. The words moved through her with unexpected force. Dorothea had always called Alma's voice too low for a woman. Edwin had suggested she speak lightly in company. August said, It is the steadiest sound I know. Alma looked away. You should rest. I have rested for 5 days. Then practice gratitude quietly. His smile followed her from the room. After his sight returned, something between them changed. August no longer concealed his admiration. He watched Alma lift sacks, knead bread, carry water, and manage the animals with a frankness that unsettled her because it contained no mockery. One afternoon, she caught him standing in the doorway while she repaired a harness strap. What are you looking at? You. Why? Because I like looking at you. Alma's hands became still. He seemed to understand that directness could be its own form of pressure. I apologize, he said. I should not have said it that way. How should you have said it? I do not know. Then perhaps the honest way is best. August stepped inside. People have told you that your body is something to endure, haven't they? Alma did not answer. They were wrong. You cannot know what people have told me. I know what happens when I look at you. I see strength. I see a woman built for real work and hard weather. I see someone who enters a room and makes it feel steadier. Her throat tightened. You are describing usefulness. No. His voice was quiet. I am describing beauty. Alma stood so quickly that the chair scraped backward. Do not say that out of kindness. I am not kind enough to lie so badly. August, I think you are beautiful. The room felt too small. Alma wanted to believe him. That frightened her more than disbelief. She left the cabin without her coat and stood in the snow until the cold forced her back. August did not repeat the declaration that night. He gave her space. The next morning, he treated her with his usual respect, neither withdrawing nor demanding an answer. That restraint mattered. A week later, Alma found the purchase contract. She was organizing documents in the tin box when a folded page slipped from a field notebook. It contained August's original proposal to Hobb. He intended to purchase Miriam's share, gain full ownership, and arrange transportation for any heir who arrived. The final line read, "The Eastern woman, should she appear, will be compensated and return to her family before winter." Alma read it twice. August entered carrying wood. "What is this?" He saw the paper. His expression changed. "Alma, you planned to send me east, before I met you. You had never met me, yet you decided I could not belong here. I thought Miriam's heir would be someone expecting a hotel. I did expect a hotel, and I was wrong. You assumed I would be an inconvenience." Yes. The honesty hurt more than an excuse. Alma placed the contract on the table. "Were your recent attentions part of another plan?" "No. You thought I might sell if I trusted you. No. You wanted the valley. I still want the valley. And my share. I want you to keep it. Because you love me. He stopped. The word stood between them. Alma regretted saying it first. August set down the wood. Yes, he said. She had not expected the answer to come so plainly. He continued before she could speak. I love you. I have for longer than I understood. But that does not erase what I intended before you arrived. No, I judged you before I saw you. Yes, I cannot change that. No. His face was strained, but he did not defend himself. Alma folded the contract. I need time. You have it. She moved into Miriam's old shed, which had a small stove and enough space for a cot. August objected on practical grounds. Alma refused to remain in the cabin. For 6 days, they worked together only when necessary. Then Lionel Beach arrived. He came on snowshoes, wearing an expensive coat, unsuitable for the mountains, and carrying a leather case protected by oilcloth. He introduced himself as an investigator employed by Pinkerton's National Detective Agency. Mrs. Dorothea Fenwick retained my services, he said. Alma stared at him. My mother believes I have been coerced? She believes you have been isolated by a man with an interest in your property. August's mouth hardened. Beach raised a hand. I am not here to arrest anyone. I was instructed to confirm Miss Fenwick's safety and deliver an offer. The offer came from Edwin Carrow. He proposed marriage, immediate return to Boston, and financial assistance in resolving the Montana property. Dorothea had also arranged for a physician and a private dressmaker to help Alma recover from the physical and social effects of frontier life. Alma read the letter beside the stove. Edwin wrote that he understood her adventure had likely cured her of unrealistic notions of independence. He promised forgiveness. Alma folded the letter. Did my mother read this before sending it? Beach shifted. I expect so. Then they both considered the word forgiveness appropriate. I only carry the message. What is the condition concerning my land? Beach opened his case. Edwin would pay Alma $1,200 if she transferred her interest to Ambrose Tilling's client before returning east. August swore. Beach looked at him. You know the name. We have received forged papers. The investigator's expression sharpened. What papers? Alma showed him the quitclaim deed dated after Miriam's death. Beach studied it. This seal is false. You are certain? Alma asked. I worked a fraud case in that county. The notary retired 3 years before this date. He removed a notebook. Mr. Tilling's involvement was not mentioned in my instructions. Would it matter? It might. Beach questioned them for 2 hours. He had been told that August manipulated Alma, withheld mail, and prevented her departure. Alma explained the landslide, showed him the trail maps, and described her ownership claim. Beach asked whether she wished to return to Boston. No. Do you feel free to leave? Yes. Has Mr. Weller threatened you? No. Has he attempted to control your property? He planned to buy it before I arrived. August did not interrupt. Beach looked between them. And now? Now he has offered to recognize my full legal share. The investigator closed his notebook. I believe your mother expected a different account. My mother has always preferred accounts she could balance herself. Beach remained at Silver Basin for 3 days because another storm closed the pass. During that time, Alma learned he was not quite what she had assumed. He was observant, restrained, and deeply suspicious of convenient stories. He examined Hobbs' correspondence, compared signatures, and asked to see Miriam's ledger. One entry drew his attention. It described a visit from Tilling 2 years earlier. Mr. Tilling offered $4,000 for the basin and became irritated when I refused. He claims mineral rights may be separated from surface rights under an older filing. Hobb insists I should trust him to arrange a favorable transfer. I trust neither. Another entry recorded Hobb borrowing Miriam's seal press to correct an estate document. Beach tapped the page. This could establish opportunity. Not the forgery itself, Alma said. No, but there may be more. He asked about Leonard's papers. Alma retrieved the packet from Boston. Among them was a letter from Miriam to Leonard, written 1 month before her death. Crispin has brought me papers to sign. I refused. He says the company will take the valley whether I sell or not. I have placed the true deed description with the county recorder and sent you a copy. If anything happens, Alma must know I left her my share without condition. Beach read the letter twice. This is useful. Can it stop the sale? Not alone. Tilling will argue that the later deed replaced her intention. The later deed was forged. We must prove it. Alma thought of Hobbs' packet in Helena. What if the fraud appears in his accounts? Beach looked at her. What do you mean? Men who steal property often imagine documents matter more than numbers, but forged transfers still require payments, fees, commissions, and dates. If Hobb kept records, he kept enough to deceive clients. That requires records. Beach considered her. You think like an investigator. I think like a bookkeeper. Same profession on honest days. When the storm eased, Beach prepared to leave. He offered to escort Alma to Boston. She declined. What should I tell Mrs. Fenwick? He asked. Tell her I am safe. And Mr. Carrow? Tell him I require no forgiveness. Beach waited. Anything else? Yes? Tell him I have learned to take up doorways. August heard the message but did not smile. After Beach left, Alma returned to the shed. That evening, August knocked. I have something for you. He handed her a legal statement, declaring that he recognized her undivided half-interest and withdrew his prior purchase claim. He had signed it before Beach as witness. You did not need to do this, Alma said. Yes, I did. If I accept, you lose the $800 you paid Hobb. I lost it when I trusted him. You could sue. I intend to. She read the statement. You wrote that no personal agreement between us should affect ownership. That seemed important. It is. August stood in the cold outside the shed. I do not expect forgiveness because I signed a paper. Good. I also do not withdraw what I said. About loving me? Yes? Alma looked at him. You make difficult things sound simple. They are not simple. I am only poor at speeches. For the first time in days, she almost smiled. Come inside before you freeze. He entered, but remained near the door. Alma folded the statement and placed it with her papers. When I read your contract, she said, I heard my mother's voice. August said nothing. She always decided what was best for me before asking what I wanted. When I came here, I thought I had escaped that. You had not. No. I am sorry. You should be. I am. She looked at his face. There was no demand in it, no expectation that regret entitled him to comfort. That mattered too. I do not know whether I can trust what is between us, she said. Then trust what I do next, or do not, but judge it for yourself. Outside, wind moved over the roof. Alma remembered Ruth saying that people would obey her if she stopped asking permission. I will, she said. Winter continued. Trust returned slowly, not through declarations but through repetition. August included Alma in every decision about the valley. He showed her correspondence before answering it. He asked rather than assumed. When she disagreed, he listened. Alma moved back into the cabin after the stovepipe in the shed cracked. She kept her own room. Their affection lived in small moments. He warmed her gloves before dawn chores. She repaired the torn lining of his field coat. He read aloud from a book on Western plants, while she prepared accounts. She corrected his pronunciation of Latin names, even when neither of them was entirely certain. In February, Button broke through river ice. The mule sank to his chest in freezing water and panicked. August tried to pull him free, but the rope slipped. Alma waded in without hesitation. The water reached her thighs. She braced herself against the current, wrapped both arms around the mule's harness, and heaved while August pulled from shore. Button scrambled onto the ice, trembling and furious. Alma emerged, soaked and shaking. August wrapped her in his coat. That was reckless. He would have drowned. So could you. But I did not. He gripped her shoulders. Do not do that again. Do not order me. I am asking. You are shouting. Because I was afraid. The words stopped them both. August's hands remained on her shoulders. I thought the river would take you, he said. Alma looked at him. Then she kissed him. It was not delicate. Their noses struck. His beard scratched her chin. For a moment, both seemed surprised. Then August pulled her closer. He kissed her as though strength were not something to avoid, but something to meet. When they separated, Alma was still shivering. This is poorly timed, she said. Extremely. Button is watching. He has no moral authority. The mule brayed. They laughed together on the ice. By March, the snow began to soften. Water ran from the eaves. Dark patches of earth appeared near the barn. The world emerged slowly from white confinement. Morris returned with news that Ambrose Tilling had filed a claim to the valley. The Northern Crown Mining Company planned to send surveyors as soon as the pass opened. He has a federal mineral lease, Morris said. Claims the surface deed was transferred to the company. On the forged document, Alma replied. There's a hearing in the county seat in 6 weeks. August looked toward the ridge. We can make it if the trail clears. It will, Alma said. She spent the next month building the case. Miriam's ledger established prior ownership and refused offers. Leonard's copies established the original deed terms. Beach sent an affidavit concerning the false notary seal. Morris provided dates proving that Hobb had claimed travel expenses on days when he had remained in Helena. The strongest evidence came from an ordinary freight receipt. Alma found it folded inside Hobb's original packet. It recorded delivery of a steel document press to his office on February 12th, 3 days after Miriam's death and 3 days before the forged deed. The press manufacturer stamped each device with a serial number. The number on the receipt matched the impression visible in wax on the false deed. Hobb had not borrowed Miriam's old seal press after all. He had purchased a new one and created an imitation. August examined the receipt. You found all that from one number that should not exist. He looked at her with open admiration. What? I am remembering every person who treated you as though you had nothing important to say. That is a long list. They were fools. They were ordinary. That may be worse. The trail opened in late April. They traveled to the county seat with Morris, Beach, and a locked box of evidence. Button carried the documents because, as Morris explained, no thief would willingly approach him. The hearing took place in a brick courthouse, crowded with miners, ranchers, company men, and local reporters. Ambrose Tilling was younger than Alma expected. He wore a well-cut suit, a silver watch chain, and the expression of someone accustomed to being the most educated man in the room. Crispin Hobb sat behind him. Hobb avoided Alma's eyes. Tilling argued that Northern Crown possessed legal title through Miriam's quitclaim deed, and that Alma's inheritance claim was invalid. He described her as a recently arrived Eastern woman unfamiliar with territorial property law. Alma felt August move beside her. She placed one hand on his arm, not to restrain him, to remind him that she would answer for herself. When called, Alma walked to the witness table. Tilling smiled politely. Miss Fenwick, you are not an attorney. No. You are not a surveyor. No. You have no formal training in land law. No. Then your belief that the company's title is invalid is based largely on personal suspicion. No. His smile weakened. On what is it based? Dates, signatures, payment records, a false notary seal, a newly purchased document press, and Mr. Hobb's accounts. A quiet murmur moved through the room. Tilling glanced at Hobb. Alma opened the ledger she had prepared. She explained each discrepancy in order. Hobb charged Miriam's estate a filing fee 2 weeks before he claimed to have received the deed. He recorded a commission from Northern Crown before the alleged transfer. He purchased a press capable of reproducing Miriam's seal after her death. He submitted travel expenses for witnessing her signature in a county he had not visited. Tilling interrupted. "You cannot establish Mr. Hobb's location merely from an account book." "No," Alma said, "but Mr. Morris Bell can establish it. Mr. Hobb played cards with him in Helena on the evening he claims to have witnessed my aunt's signature 200 miles away." Several people laughed. The judge struck his gavel. Tilling's face reddened. Alma continued. She produced the manufacturer's affidavit linking the press serial number to Hobb's purchase. She produced Beech's statement that the supposed notary had retired years earlier. She produced Miriam's final letter. Then she placed the forged deed beside a genuine one. "My aunt formed the capital F in our family name with a double downward stroke," Alma said. "She did so in every letter, ledger entry, and legal signature available. The forged deed uses a single stroke." Tilling leaned forward. "Handwriting varies." "It does. Death does not." The room went silent. "My aunt died 6 days before this document says she signed it." The judge looked at Hobb. Crispin's face had gone pale. Tilling requested a recess. The judge denied it. Under questioning, Hobb claimed clerical confusion. Then he blamed a junior clerk. When informed that the non-existent notary seal could result in criminal charges, he began to sweat. Beech leaned toward the county prosecutor and whispered something. Hobb broke. He admitted creating the deed at Tilling's instruction, though Tilling immediately denied it. Hobb claimed the mining company had promised him a percentage of the sale. Tilling accused him of lying to save himself. Perhaps he was, perhaps he was not. But the deed was invalid either way. The judge dismissed Northern Crown's claim, affirmed Alma and August's joint ownership, and referred the forgery to the territorial prosecutor. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered around them. One asked Alma how a woman without legal training had uncovered the fraud. She considered the question. "I read what men assumed no one would read," she said. Another reporter asked whether she planned to sell now that the title was secure. "No. What will you do with a remote valley?" Alma looked at August. He did not answer for her. She looked toward the mountains visible beyond the town roofs. "We will build something honest." Edwin Carrow arrived in Helena 2 days later. Dorothea had sent him after receiving Beech's report. He requested a private meeting. Alma agreed to meet him in the hotel parlor, with August seated across the room. Edwin looked uncomfortable with the arrangement. "You appear changed," he said. "I am. You have lost some weight." Alma nearly laughed. After months of mountain work, her body remained large, stronger perhaps, harder in the arms and shoulders, but still fully and unmistakably hers. "I have lost patience," she said. "Perhaps that is what you notice." Edwin folded his gloves. "Your mother is distressed." "My mother is often distressed when I make decisions." "She believes Mr. Weller has influenced you." "He has." August looked up. Alma continued. "He has taught me to read weather, cross ice, handle livestock, and sleep through the sound of coyotes." "That is not what I meant." "I know." Edwin lowered his voice. "Alma, whatever has happened here, it need not define the rest of your life. You can return with me. We can still marry. Why would you want that?" "Because I have always respected you. You wanted me altered before you would announce an engagement. That was advice. It was a condition." He looked irritated. "You are being unfair." "No, I am being exact." Edwin glanced toward August. "Is this because of him?" Alma followed his gaze. August sat quietly, allowing her to choose. "No," she said. "It is because of me." She returned Edwin's letter. "I do not wish to marry you. You may regret refusing security. I spent most of my life mistaking control for security. His face hardened. You think this man can offer you a respectable life? Alma rose. The movement forced Edwin to look up at her. I no longer measure my life by the respect of people who require me to be ashamed. Edwin left the next morning. Dorothea sent no further letters for almost a year. Alma and August returned to Silver Basin in May. Spring transformed the valley. Snowmelt filled the river. Meadows greened. Wildflowers appeared along the cabin walls. The collapsed building near the barn had once been Miriam's original boarding house. Alma stood among the fallen beams and began making plans. They rebuilt it. Morris brought lumber. Local carpenters came for wages. August designed sturdy rooms for travelers, survey crews, scientists, and families crossing the mountains. Alma created the accounts, set fair prices, and insisted upon a large kitchen with a table wide enough for strangers to sit together without crowding. They named it the Silver Basin Way Station. The first guests arrived in August, a widowed mother traveling with 2 children, a botanist from Philadelphia, and 3 railroad workers caught by rain. Alma gave the family the warmest room. August spent half the night arguing with the botanist over the classification of a mountain flower. Button stole a worker's hat. The way station made a modest profit that first year. A better one the second. Alma became known throughout the region as someone who could untangle accounts, identify dishonest contracts, and organize supplies before winter. Ranchers rode miles to ask her advice. Small businesses paid her to review their books. No one lowered their voice when she entered a room. No one asked her to turn sideways in a doorway. Sometimes strangers still stared. Some were unkind. The world had not transformed simply because Alma had. But she had transformed enough that their judgment no longer became her own. August loved her without hesitation. He loved the steadiness of her, the intelligence of her, the physical reality of her. He loved how she could lift a flour barrel with him, how she filled a chair, how her low voice carried through a storm, and how travelers calmed when she said everything would be handled. He never asked her to become smaller. Alma loved him because he learned. Not because he had never judged her, but because he faced the harm of his judgment without excuse and changed his behavior. He did not demand credit for becoming better. He simply became better and continued. They married in the meadow above the river. Morris performed the ceremony as a justice of the peace. Lionel Beach attended while passing through on another investigation. Button ate half the flowers from Alma's bouquet. Alma wore dark blue wool instead of white. August could not stop looking at her. During the vows, he said, I promise to stand beside you. Not before her, not over her, beside her. Years later, a letter arrived from Boston. Dorothea's hand had become unsteady. She wrote that Edwin had married someone else, that the Fenwick house had been sold, and that illness had made the winters difficult. She did not apologize directly. Dorothea was a woman who had spent too many years confusing pride with survival. But the letter ended with a question. Would Alma permit her mother to visit? Alma sat at the long kitchen table while snow touched the windows. Travelers spoke quietly in the adjoining room. August repaired a lantern near the stove. Will you invite her? He asked. I do not know. You do not owe her comfort. No. But you may choose it. Alma looked around the way station. Every part of it had been built from choice. The ownership, the work, the marriage, the welcome offered to strangers. She wrote back. Dorothea arrived the following summer. She stepped from Morris's wagon wearing black, though no one had recently died. She looked smaller than Alma remembered. For a long moment, mother and daughter faced each other beneath the wide Montana sky. Dorothea's gaze moved over Alma's broad body, strong arms, work apron, and sun-browned face. Then she looked at the way station, the full barn, the travelers, the mountains, and August standing at a respectful distance. You have built all this, she said. We have. Dorothea swallowed. I did not imagine it. No, Alma said. You did not. There was pain in the words, but not cruelty. Dorothea looked down. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting me from disapproval by teaching me to disapprove of myself. Her mother closed her eyes. The silence lasted a long time. I am sorry, Dorothea said. It was not enough to erase the past. Nothing could be. But it was real. Alma stepped aside and opened the door. You may come in. Dorothea entered the way station through a doorway wide enough for both of them. Alma's life did not become meaningful because one man found her beautiful, one courtroom believed her evidence, or one mother finally admitted fault. It became meaningful because Alma stopped surrendering the right to define herself. She learned that strength did not need to be disguised to make others comfortable, that love without equality was merely another form of confinement, and that belonging was not something granted by respectable people in distant rooms. It was something built through honest work, freely chosen loyalty, and the courage to remain fully oneself. The deepest lesson of Alma Fenwick's life was simple. No person should have to become smaller to deserve love, dignity, or a place in the world. True love does not rescue someone from who they are. It sees them clearly, stands beside them faithfully, and gives them room to stand at their full height.